Well, yes, including this one a little bit, because it's all willy-won'ty, really. Andy Burnham. Well, he's sort of set out his manifesto as he says some Labour MPs are privately pushing him to challenge the leadership of Sir Keir Starmer.
In an exclusive interview with The Telegraph, he refused to rule out a return to Westminster ahead of May's local elections in his most direct hint yet.
Yeah, he also sort of said, well, he's quite happy not to go anywhere. So, I mean, make of it what you will. The Mayor of Greater Manchester criticised the Prime Minister, though, which is, you know, important, saying he'd created a climate of fear amongst his MPs.
Yeah, and he actually went on in this broad hint, that sounds like very definitely more than a broad hint, to set out his policies, including £40 billion borrowing to build more council homes.
£40 billion of borrowing?
Aren't we, what, 1.3 trillion or 13 trillion? I know there's a 1 and a 3 trillions in it.
Maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know. All right, let's talk to former Immigration Minister Kevin Foster, who's here. Good to see you this morning. You know how politics works. The fact that he's said, well, I'm not really looking to move, I'm happy where I am, but people are pushing, that's a definite yes, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We can all think back. Let's think back about 13 years ago when Boris Johnson was Mayor of London, and there was lots of speculation about him. I remember him being followed by the press pack at a party conference as he came up to say he was absolutely loyal to David Cameron, and he was looking forward to being mayor forever. Well, we know what happened over the following years there. And this has the ring about a sort of a definitely maybe. But it also is quite interesting to look at how we've actually got here. Less than 18 months ago, nearly 400 Labour MPs were elected. And now they're going off to the Mayor of Manchester to try and get what they think might be their salvation. And this then you bring up, how could he actually do this? Because the sort of seats that you'd have thought would have been shoo-ins for Labour would now be seats that I suspect Nigel would be looking forward to giving this man a bloody nose.
The problem with Andy Burnham is Mayor of Manchester, but it's not an MP. So therefore, he can't actually challenge until he's an MP.
Yeah, he can't be an MP. So first, he actually, there has to be a by-election.
Yeah.
Second, he has to become the Labour candidate for that by-election. I suspect Keir Starmer would move heaven and earth to try and stop that. But if he does, he's then actually got to get out and campaign. It's obvious why he's doing it. It's then against a backdrop of an MP perhaps having resigned to allow this to happen. Of course, by the way, that also means he's resigning as mayor. So again, that potentially means a mayoral by-election. And lots of voters don't really like people playing games with them. And this would have all the hallmarkings of a disaster for the Labour Party in the making.
He could get a lot of appeal because one of the concerns for the Labour Party is a split, with thanks to Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana. I mean, it's not going very well at the moment, but nevertheless, there's a potential of a sort of split there. Andy Burnham has said he'd work with anyone to unite Labour, including Jeremy Corbyn. Now, that's going to appeal to a lot of people, isn't it?
Well, it's worth remembering he served in Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet, although your party, without getting too much into them, are proving the old adage of put 3 Marxists on a desert island and a week later you'll have 2 factions and a unity group. So it's the way they're going. But Andy Burnham could say he would try and pivot to the left. That's obviously his pitch. We've got a shadow contest of that going on at the moment between Bridget Phillipson and Lucy Powell. Lucy Powell, clearly, if you'd like the idea of Andy Burnham being your natural leader, vote Lucy to be your deputy. And if you quite like Keir, you vote for Bridget. It's why she's struggling. But I just find there's so many hurdles here. The big one, though, is trying to win a by-election. He'd either have to go into a seat where he'd probably be facing off against Reform, or go into a seat where he's going to be facing off against a pro-Gaza independent. Both of those could end very badly.
And the thing is, every time we would discuss Andy Burnham, and obviously if you live in Manchester, you have a much stronger opinion. I mean, it doesn't seem that popular in Manchester as a mayor.
Well, he's won, but, I've got family in Duckingfield, which is part of Greater Manchester. They would be traditionally Labour voters. I don't think they'll be rushing down a polling station to vote for Andy Burnham. And if there was a choice in their area, they live in Duckingfield's part of Tameside. I suspect if they had a choice between Nigel and Andy, they'd go with Nigel in an actual by-election. So that's the real thing. I just think you look at all the hurdles here. This isn't like Boris Johnson coming to the end of a term as mayor, standing in a general election in a vacant seat where an MP is standing down. This is potentially going into a high-risk by-election. I think, you know, he's positioning himself and he's obviously trying to test the waters out, but I just cannot see this ending in anything other than disaster for Labour if he actually gets an MP to resign for him.
I'm intrigued by the fact that you're quite right with the by-elections. I mean, at the minute, who would like to call one? But it's the fact that you, as a former Tory minister, just keep saying, well, Nigel. Not Kemi.
Well, I think if we look at most of the seats in Greater Manchester, it'd be quite a day for some of the ones that Andy Burnham would be looking at. If the Conservative Party was winning them, we'd probably be over 500 MPs. But look, let's be clear, at the moment, the threat they would have in those constituencies is clearly reform. I'm sure the Conservative candidate in that by-election would work extremely hard. You know, they wouldn't at all be told to sort of, like, you know, put some tweet outs, look busy and not do a lot, because of the prospect of the Labour Party having quite such a disastrous result. Because if these MPs got their way, if he goes down this plan and then loses, what's Labour's plan B after that? How are they going to go out and reconnect and say, you know, we actually had this plan, our phase 3 of this government, you know, was going to be Andy Burnham, and oh, hang on, he didn't even get elected in what we thought was a banking seat. Where do they go next after that?
And it's the Labour conference this weekend coming up. Just for once, it's actually going to be quite exciting. I mean, watch this space. What's going to happen?
Well, it is. It's going to be an interesting one. You're going to have the official conference agenda, apparently about phase 2 of Keir Starmer's government. Whilst at the same time, the really interesting thing is going to be the deputy leader fight, which is a shadow boxing between, fundamentally, Keir Starmer and Andy Burnham, given Lucy Powell's one of the other candidates. When you think Lucy Powell, the person he sacked very recently, could soon be his nominated deputy, elected by his party members.
Well done a minute, though. When did Andy Burnham suddenly become so left-wing? I mean, from his time in government, I don't remember him being... I'd always viewed him, and I interviewed him all the time, always viewed him as more of a centrist. And suddenly he's talking, I'm going to borrow $40 billion to build council houses. I'm going to seriously look at things like wealth taxes. He just seems to be veering considerably off to the left.
Yeah, I think a lot of us who remember his time in the Brown and Blair administrations are quite interested to ask, you know, perhaps go back and ask Andy Burnham 2009 what he thinks of Andy Burnham 2025. I think we can all guess where some of these long-held principles are coming from. They're coming from the fact that he's going to have to appeal to an electorate that fundamentally wants to talk about wealth taxes, Gaza, looking back to a mythical era, they think, in the 1940s, and let's be honest, doesn't want to talk about things like guilt crises, how we secure our borders, and the international security situation.
All right, Kevin, we're going to talk to you a little bit later on, but for now, thanks very much indeed.
Indeed. Well, as always, let us know what you think on that one, especially if you're in Manchester, because, I mean, I'm not in Manchester. I don't understand why he's so unpopular in Manchester.
No, I don't. I have to say, I wasn't aware of that particular... No. I mean, there's always going to be splits, isn't there?
Of course.
He's meant to be until 2028.
Yes.
Could he do both jobs?
I don't think he's allowed to. Are they allowed to do both jobs?
I don't know.
Anyway, gbnews.com/your say, especially if you're in Manchester. Let us know what you think about Andy Burnham, potentially our next Prime Minister.
Potentially.